Welcome back to another episode of Blue Collar Banter. Nick, I posted a picture on social media about myself, and it has my kids in it, and that's a weird thing to do because the internet is a scary place, and sometimes you don't want your kids out there. But the picture was more about myself than it was the kids, right? Savage Grit technically started 17 years ago. 18 years ago? 18 years ago. And that was when I got my felony. That was when I got a record. Now, if you rewind a little bit before that, that's when things really started to take a turn. Growing up, I had a good life. I can't say I was abused or all that stuff. My dad was he did his stuff with the motorcycle club and whatnot, but it wasn't bad by any stretch of the means. You know what I mean? We had more than we needed. So I can't say it was like that, but I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be like my dad, which is ironic to say because I was embarrassed of my dad, and I shouldn't have been. He was a truck driver, and he was covered in tattoos and had rowdy friends and whatnot, but my other friends' parents were lawyers and cops, and they weren't that. So when I was 11, 12 years old, it was kind of embarrassing. And then you have teachers saying if you don't do well in school, then you're just going to be a garbage man. You know, you're going to do manual labor. And they use it as a threat so you can pass their stupid fucking test. And then you fast forward to realize that it's just to keep you in a fucking like worker mentality. That's really all it is. And that's a whole nother fucking episode. But anyway, growing up, even though I was embarrassed of his job, and I shouldn't have been by any stretch of the means, I wanted to be like him. He was still my hero because he took care of me and my mom and my sister. And when he wasn't working, he was working around the house. His days off always rotated, right? So it was never a set schedule. But if he wasn't, because his hobby was he had a race car, right? He had a drag truck, and he would be working on that. We built the Chevelle together. We had a 69 or 67 Chevelle. Sorry, not a 69. That was a truck. And that's what he would do. But he also, he loved to bake and cook and all that. But he was my hero, and I wanted to be like him. But he always said no. He said, "Don't be anything like me, Nicholas." And I never understood why, because he seemed to make it for himself pretty well, right? But he was a high school dropout, and he had a rough life. So I didn't understand that, right? I thought it was just, oh, whatever. You did it, so fuck it, I can do it too. Now, mind you, when I was in high school, I was 5'5", 100 pounds, freshman year, and I got the shit kicked out of me. Because I had a mouth on me. This isn't like a newfound thing. I always had a mouth on me. And you learn how to take a punch, you learn how to throw a punch. But I'll never forget that I was afraid to go to school one time. And I was like, I knew I was going to get beat up. I was afraid to go to school. And I woke up my parents, and I was like in 7th, 8th grade, 7th grade, middle school. Can't remember the exact grade. And I told my parents, I said, look, I'm afraid to go to school. I'm going to get beat up. And they looked at me and they said, I'm sorry. That sucks. You got two choices. Both my parents, mom and dad. They said, you can either tell the teacher or you can fight. Thames is it, dog. They didn't say that, but for lack of a better term, that's really what it was. And that was the life lesson of the century for me. Am I going to be a narc or am I going to fight, right? Now, me not being a narc led into a lot of things, which is kind of why I got a felony later on. But that was a lesson that I kept. And then I thought, okay, well, if I could take my lumps here, what else can I do? So I knew that when my dad would do his thing back in the day, a lot of it was before I was around. I learned that I can be like him and I can sell certain things of the extracurricular activities, and I was good at it. Why? If I'm being 100% honest with you, it's because of my size and because of the fact that I'm outgoing and I laugh a lot, right? So you wouldn't expect things from me to move anything if I acted a certain way. At least that's what I thought, right? But what that did was that got me into a lot of trouble. That got me into a lot of fistfights. That got me into a lot of sketchy shit that I shouldn't have been in. There's no way, or no way. There's no reason why I needed to be going in San Leandro at 2 o'clock in the morning, walking down the street. There ain't no fucking way why I need to do that at 15 years old. Now, but I did. And we all have those stories that we should have been dead. You know, we're at fucking Becky's house spending the night, but we're fucking passed out drunk in a field somewhere. But because I didn't get caught, I started to get a God complex. And I started to get, oh, I'm invincible, right? And I'm not going to say a lot of details because it's still incriminating. I don't know laws like that of statute of limitations. So I would use that to my advantage, right? I learned how to fight, and that got me in trouble because once I knew that I could defend myself and I could do things, I was more mouthy. So when I would get upset or I would be stressed out, I would go to a fucking bar and I would just pick a fight. I'd smack a drink out of somebody's hand. I'd punk somebody, whatever. What I thought was cool, just to get a rise out of people, right? And the thing about it was, all that did was make me look foolish. And there was a point in time in my life where if you were a dude, I would talk so much shit to make you swing at me. And if you were a female, I would talk shit to make you cry. And then I would consider myself the winner of the argument, and that's not right. So my God complex, my douche years, went as far as I have the word immortal tattooed across my stomach, like the UFC fighter Matt Brown. And because I thought I was. And all that did was lead down a path of destruction. I had kids when I was young. I got married at 18, divorced at 21, and I had 2 kids in that situation. And that wasn't enough to pull me out of being a douche, but it was enough to make me play safer, if that makes sense. And then it goes along the lines of me getting arrested. Now, when I got arrested, it, for the first time, like the big time, like not just like a handcuffs because of a bar fight or, you know, you're just disorderly conduct or whatever it is. Those are just kind of slaps on the wrist, right? Just all right, just sober up here and you can go pay your fine, whatever it is, court date for blah, 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 right? Not a big deal. But when I got arrested and I had to go in front of the judge, and, you know, you're sleeping in the general population until they can sort out the violent crimes from the non-violent crimes and they can figure out what you're going to do. My bail was set at $1 million. And that was a scary time. But who was there? My dad. And they always swore when I was a kid that they would never bail me out of jail. But he did. And that is why, another reason why I think I had the God complex is because my dad always bailed me out. And that time he bailed me out. Literally bailed me out. And I still didn't learn. I had to do a bunch of stuff. I couldn't keep going to court to fight this because what people wanted to happen was they wanted me to roll on other people, right? They wanted me to narc. You can tell or you can fight. Nick, what are you going to do? Well, I fought. That's not one of those times that you take that advice and use it. In hindsight, I should have fucking rolled. Why? Because what the fuck did it get me? A fucking record, and everybody else got off scot-free. I digress. With that, it got me into more shit because now I have a felony on my record. It is not easy to get a job. And then I decided to get my hands tattooed, my arms tattooed, my fucking ear tattooed. I got all this stuff because Pop bailed me out. When I was 24, my dad died. And that's why I won't ever sleep with my phone off anymore. Because I woke up and my dad died. So one of the hardest parts of my life was when, like I said, my dad was a truck driver. He had an aneurysm in his stomach and had to have surgery and get it taken out. Walked into the hospital, they fucked up. So it was a training hospital and knocked him out with anesthesia, did an epidural, fucked up a nerve, lost feeling in his leg, right? And then it started to gradually come back. Long story short, homie died because he hit his head. And that was a rough time. That was a real rough time for me because Even then, when I found out, I was selfish, right? That was my hero. That was my idol. And he was gone. But he was also my safety net to where I'm like, now what do I do? Right? Now, there was drama that happened in my life. No duh. But prior to that, to where I didn't talk to my parents for like 4 months, right? And that's another podcast. But with this, something happened at the house, and I got into it with my mom or something like that. My dad stood up for his wife, right, to his adult son, because I'm a man. I shouldn't disrespect a woman, but I disrespected my mother because I was on some shit, and popped off at my dad and said, fuck it, I'm out. And then I didn't talk to my dad for 4 months. And then I got the phone call that he died. So that was the hard part, was he was gone, right? Whatever that stupid fucking fight was about, he was gone. So you fast forward now I'm 38 years old. I'm going to be 39 years old. And he never saw any of my accomplishments, right? He only saw me being a douche. He only saw the fuck up. And that's not okay. So I put everything into this company, Savage Grit, now because I had to be a savage back in the day. But it's a different type of savage, right? I wanted to be a savage like my dad because he was a G, right? He had that respect from people, so I wanted to be like that. Then I wanted to be a savage like everybody I was working with, because my first job was a roofer, and then I started working in gas lines, and now I'm an electrician. I have my commercial license. You got to be a fucking savage to do all this shit. But being a parent, you got to be a savage too, because you have to fight the monsters. You have to make sure that you're there for them. You have to go check out the scary things in the dark, and it sucks. Now, the guilt that I have is never going to go away. That my dad never saw me change. He never saw me be a man. I want to call him to tell him I did it. I changed. My kids have a father that they can look up to, that will protect them. I have my commercial license just like you. I am certified to work on gas lines. I'm a fucking state certified journeyman for California to be an electrician. I have all of these things because of you. And I'll never get to say thank you verbally, or to his face, you know what I mean? But I put forth all the effort for him, for my kids, for my family. There are a lot of ways to be savage. Some people look at it as a bad thing. I don't. And what I urge everybody to do is take a look at themselves for what they want in life. Time is a weird thing, right? You spend all these years fighting for what? And I mean fighting in every which way. Fighting for school grades, fighting for the girl or boy you like, fighting for the money, fighting for the job, the house, the car, whatever it is. You're fighting for what? Because at the end of the time, if you're lucky to make it there, we all leave the same way we came in, alone. And that's a weird thing to do. That's a weird thing to realize. And that's why I like this brand so much. It's a weird, twisty, turny thing here, but it gets me to interact with everybody. It gets me to make sure I'm talking to people. It gets me to grow and to show my kids that there's more out there. So I say all of that. I'm vulnerable like that because I'm never vulnerable like this, because this is where Savage Grit started from. This is where Savage Grit is going. And this is where I want everybody to be a part of. So thank you for listening. Stay tuned to the next ones. I'm done being vulnerable now.